Hey everyone, we're here with Megashift today. I have Micah Kotch, the Managing Director of UrbanX, which is a fund that is very exciting in entering the civic tech space. So we're here to learn more about that. So welcome, Micah.
Thanks.
So why don't you just start explaining UrbanX and your role?
Sure. So UrbanX is a venture accelerator that is focused on smart city startups. It is a joint venture between Mini and Hacks, which is part of SOSV. And it's really a mission-driven partnership between these two firms. So Hacks has about $250 million of assets under management. It's done the accelerator model in places like Boston and San Francisco and Shanghai. Particular expertise on hardware. And Mini is a kind of quintessential urban brand that has a deep expertise in design and engineering and technology and usability. And so these two entities came together to create UrbanX to really make cities more efficient and livable, and to do that through the mechanism of startups and support for entrepreneurs who are really bringing new solutions to market that are going to help improve people's lives in cities. And so I serve as the managing director for Mini, and my goal is to basically help teams find product market fit and to get them to a place where they are really building something for customers that matters, and also to help them kind of understand the fundamental economics of what's going to make their startup scalable and successful in the long run.
Very cool. Thank you. So with this most recent cohort that just went through, how many startups were involved in this class?
So we had 9 companies who were part of cohort 1, and these companies were tackling things like big data and analytics for city planning. They were tackling things like transportation and last mile mobility issues, food waste, urban agriculture. We had a drone company in this first cohort. And so our thesis is that we believe that the city ultimately kind of becomes a platform, and we're looking for startups who are kind of engineering the city as a service. And we're looking at kind of big problems that need to be solved around how cities kind of move forward in the 21st century. And I think there's a kind of convergence of data and information and communications technology infrastructure, things like public safety and security, distributed energy solutions, and the need for adaptation and mitigation of climate issues. And those create tremendous amounts of opportunity and also real need for people who are living in cities. And we deeply believe that the best way to meet those needs and kind of come up with the solutions that we really need in the fastest time frame is via startups.
Very cool. And so what, if you were to put a number on it, what percentage of the startups are more product focused and which ones are more service focused or infrastructure focused?
So, most of the companies come in thinking that they have a product. So, generally it's a physical product, right? It's hardware, infrastructure solution. I think that the value add of UrbanX is actually to help them speak to customers, figure out who their customer is, what the value proposition that their customer actually cares about, right? The gain that they can create for that customer, the pain that they can alleviate for that customer. And then to have that kind of dictate whether or not that product is sold as a service, or it's sold as just sold as a product, or if it fits into kind of a bigger solution, and there's an opportunity to kind of create that product in a mechanism where it solves kind of a deeper seated need. And that's kind of the challenge, because I think many hardware companies tend to be very product centric. and kind of tapping into that deeper vision around thinking about what a more universal or scalable or repeatable kind of need is to kind of build a company around that. That's really where we push.
Very cool. And so, what type of being part of a larger entity and in a partnership between these different entities like Mini and Hacks, what are some of the resources that portfolio companies get that are different or significant versus other funds?
Sure.
Or other incubators?
Right. So I think most programs that are going to help to accelerate the growth of a startup are going to bring mentors to the table. And I think there's a differentiation in terms of the quality of the people in program versus program. And so there is just a pretty outstanding roster of talent, people who've commercialized technology, who've brought new products to market, who've worked in government, who've sold to both the private sector and to government, who are thinking about kind of business model innovation in this space, and that's I think a really important point that maybe we'll come back to later. But what we also bring is again real deep experience at the bench and understanding kind of hardware technology specifically, and Hacks has some really great services around helping with electrical system design and prototype development, understanding supply chains. The teams now are actually in Munich. They're spending time with engineers from the company in Munich, and then they're off to Shenzhen, China, to really again understand what the process of actually bringing a hardware product to market is like. So I think there, I think about the services. It's really kind of product development, and that has to do with industrial design. So we have people from the company who are industrial designers and embedded electrical systems engineers who are actually spending day to day with the companies over the course of the 4 months that they're with us. And then it's really customer development, and I think that also is something that we do a little bit differently. So we really emphasize the process of customer discovery, customer development, understanding kind of customer acquisition costs and strategies, understanding get, keep, grow strategies, really thinking through all the different elements, the revenue model, right, value propositions, cost structures, partnership strategies, go-to-market strategies that are absolutely essential for startups to really understand and get right. And then I think the last thing that comes along with that is then to say, we're going to help you build relationships with investors who really understand this space. And in some cases, those are angels, and in other cases, those are institutional sources of venture capital. One of our companies, Brooklyness, who's developed this really awesome connected bike helmet, just launched their Kickstarter the day before yesterday. So we're able to kind of help with things like that, with those kinds of campaigns when it's needed. Very cool.
So there's obviously a lot of stakeholders in the project. So if there were some words that you would ascribe to the community of within New York, and as well as within the portfolio companies, what are some adjectives that sort of come to mind?
So I think the community in New York is really diverse, and I think that that diversity of skill sets and perspectives is one of the things that I love about New York. You have policymakers, people who bring a utility perspective, academics. The creative and the design community here is really vibrant, and that's something that we're really close to. I think that the next objective that I would use is scale, and New York I think is a model for really kind of mega cities. And you think about the trajectory of growth, the number of mega cities that have more than 10 million people now, I think is 21. That number is expected to grow to more than 40 by 2030. So really that large scale impact is, I think, is unique to this city and potentially to this program. And I guess the last one would be vibrant. I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of venture activity here, and people who are supporting startups in this space. So, one of the people who I really look up to in this space are Sean Abramson and Stoney Baptiste from Urban.us. They've made 22 early stage investments in urban tech.
Wow.
Half of their portfolio companies are in New York. And when you look at kind of the ecosystem, the folks who are kind of springing up to support companies, and I kind of look at the full stack, and it's everything from the city's economic development corporation to what's happening at the state regulators who are really transforming the energy industry here. Places like New Lab, which just opened up in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. That kind of density of support doesn't really exist in any other city.
Right.
And so as a result, again, having kind of half of his portfolio of early stage urban tech companies in New York City is not necessarily a surprising outcome, but I think that's kind of what we're after and what we want to participate, how we want to kind of add to the dialogue with this community is to basically build a cluster here, and to work together kind of with the other stakeholders who are really looking to support companies and have them grow here.
Yeah, and you had mentioned you're a New York native, a Brooklyn native, so did you ever, as a kid or a teenager, envision that New York would have a landscape like this? I mean, New York's obviously the city of dreams, but is this in line with sort of your expectations, or was it surprising as you came of age in your career?
Well, so I mean, New York is the largest commercial real estate market in the world, and we're also the home of finance and media, and so I think that after the financial crisis of 2008, there was a real need to think about diversifying the city's economy away from Wall Street. And at the same time, you've had kind of the digitization of a number of different sectors, and you look at media as kind of the shining example of that. So as you started to see kind of the proliferation of information and communication technologies to other sectors like construction and real estate and energy, that creates a whole tremendous amount of opportunity. And so, I'm not sure if I would have ever thought that this is where we would be when I was kind of growing up. I think the ingredients kind of were there. And as long as New York continues, I think, to attract really smart, creative people to work on some of our biggest problems. And I think the other important point is that you have a shift in mindset for policymakers and for regulators, right? People who are actually writing the laws, people who are doing things like pushing open data, then that really kind of creates a market pull. And if you're a founder, you're going to say, number one, I want to be kind of where other, again, smart, creative talent actually is. And number two is, I want an ecosystem in which I can kind of build something based on, an open hand from the policy establishment. And so, that I think that is uniquely, again, happening in New York. And I actually spent the last 2 years working in the clean energy space in New York. And what's happening here with some of the regulatory reform and the way that the utility business model is changing to make the grid here more clean and resilient and affordable and efficient creates this market pull. And so as a result, now you start to see more and more activity here. So it really kind of takes a mind shift, I think, from not just entrepreneurs, but also from policymakers, as well as some of the kind of bigger incumbents, folks like the utilities and some of the really big kind of customers here who can move markets.
Very cool. If you would talk a little bit about UrbanX's criteria or how the investments or the companies are chosen and curated. What's that process look like? You had mentioned you're growing into this role, so just wanted to give you space to talk about the process and how you see it and how it's developing.
Sure. So I think it's really important for us that we find founders who are focused on, providing kind of better urban living through technology. And so I think, the team is kind of criteria number one. It's do we believe that the people who have this vision are actually going to be able to execute on the vision. I think, number two at this stage, because it's really early, that we are looking at teams is, how robust is the vision and how believable is it, and how compelling or differentiated is that vision, right? And so, I think we look at, things like track record and capability of the team as a real priority for us. Their level of commitment and creativity and coachability, right? The ability to kind of take feedback and process that and use that to move forward. I think that's a characteristic of really great entrepreneurs. And then we look at, we certainly, will look at, how big the idea can actually be and its ability to make an impact, both from a financial perspective and also, again, from a, society scale perspective, right? Is it actually solving a real problem around urban hypergrowth and cities of the future?
Cool. So again, another native New Yorker question. Do you have thoughts on Sidewalk Labs and the recent Link NYC? As far as revitalizing that old infrastructure, do you think it's been successful? Do you think that it could use improvement? Kind of just your general thoughts, if you're willing to comment.
I don't know if I'm in the best position to comment on that.
Okay, that's no worries. It's been an interesting. I wrote an article on it a couple months ago. It's an interesting, endeavor, and it's good to see that happening. And revitalizing stuff. But we'll leave it at that. Okay. Sure. So, I've heard other VCs and people in this industry say that they're looking 3 to 5 years out, and that's sort of guides their strategy. It guides their strategy. There's a lot of criteria. So where do you think the puck is going in terms of civic tech and wide scale adoption, and how is that guiding the investment strategy? What are some particular industries that you think are ripe for scale?
Sure. So this is a really interesting question. I think that arguably there's more than one right answer to this, right? So we talked a little bit about this, about kind of when you start to segment cities by size. You have really small, innovative cities that can kind of leapfrog a generation of technology and bring kind of potentially disruptive technologies to scale. Then I think you have kind of mid-tier cities, and then you have big mega cities, and then you also have cities in the developing world, which also tend to be incredibly sizable from a population perspective, but lack some very basic infrastructure around clean water and reliable electricity and all those kind of fundamental things you think about as the connective tissue of a city. I think that we kind of think that every city will really be a platform upon which the tools of kind of the metropolis will be built. So you can kind of think about the city as a service that can help to meet the needs of the world that's rapidly urbanizing. And so then you begin to think about what are what are the themes there? And so, clearly one is public safety and security. A huge one is transportation and traffic management. Energy systems, particularly the trend towards more distributed energy solutions and the need for resiliency in light of more extreme weather events, I think is a really big one. Food and urban agriculture, waste and water infrastructure, which is, even in this country, there are water lines that still have wooden pipe in sections of that infrastructure. There are places here in New York, believe it or not, where the electrical lines in service were actually installed by Thomas Edison. Those lines are still in service today. So I think there's a whole lot of low-hanging fruit. We're really excited about kind of this shift towards mobility and both kind of shared services and autonomous services, and thinking about kind of the second order opportunities that those kind of technology shifts will bring, is really kind of rich with opportunity for value creation. It's a pretty white space. So I don't know that we are kind of prescriptive in exactly the what solution that we're looking for. I think we really want to empower entrepreneurs and increase the likelihood that they're actually going to be successful.
Very cool. And you had mentioned you had studied in China at one point. Do you speak Chinese or German?
I still speak some Chinese.
Yeah.
Certainly not nearly as fluent as I was when I was living there.
Yeah.
But it was a remarkable experience for me. I was there at a time when everyone had a cell phone, and again, this is a great example where China really kind of leapfrogged the whole landline telecom world. And you think about kind of big industries that are changing and the need to kind of reinvent their business models as they go. So when I was in China, again, I kind of saw the shift towards cell phones and this proliferation of wireless devices. And I came back to the States at a time when the wireless carriers like AT&T and Sprint and Verizon were really looking for applications for people to actually use data. They had spent all this money on spectrum and infrastructure. They didn't really know how people were going to use all the data. And if you think about where we were, almost 20 years ago, where you bought your cell phone plan on how many minutes of voice you would use, right? To kind of the pricing model that we have today, where it's essentially unlimited, right? Voice has basically been completely commoditized, and now it's free.
Right.
And that the business model shift that the carriers kind of went through, I think there's a very, very similar shift in the electric utility industry, and also in other sectors where big companies are kind of being forced to rethink their relationship with their customers and also how they price the value that they offer. And so I think that creates a tremendous amount of opportunity.
Very cool. And so is there anything that I haven't asked you yet that you really feel compelled to share or explore? As far as the mission or...
Yeah, I think so. I guess I think that there's a point that I would like to make about just kind of cities and so, as I said before, so Mini really is this quintessentially urban brand, and we recognize that the city is changing dramatically, and so as we kind of think about that, what we're really interested in doing is kind of empowering people to live better, more vibrant lives in cities. And I think that's a really, I think the kind of the path to get there requires multiple stakeholders, which is what makes a lot of this work really complicated and challenging, right? Because it kind of takes the solution to kind of bring a new product to market is not always, straightforward. In some cases, the channel is the city itself, right? It's municipal government. In other cases, it's someone like, the local distribution utility. In other cases, it's a big enterprise. And in other cases, it might be kind of direct to consumer. So navigate, it's not a one-size-fits-all path for a lot of entrepreneurs, and they can really struggle with that. And so, again, to the extent that I think we can offer some value in terms of helping them bring a better product to market faster, that is a core part of our mission. And that's why we're so excited to invest in 20 companies a year. And applications are open now for Cohort 2. So we're going to kick off Cohort 2 in October. And we're really excited about some of the things that we're seeing. And we're really looking for people who can help kind of solve the big problems that we have today in cities and will likely continue to experience tomorrow.
Very cool. And as the applications are coming in, are you seeing more volume in particular subsets? We had, you had just spoken that it's a blank canvas. And there's a lot of different types of permutations of the industries. But as far as early applications go, are you seeing a concentration of particular types of businesses or solutions?
So
problems they're solving.
So I think that there's been an increase in folks using machine learning technologies and analytics and visualization to solve city problems. I think that's kind of one. I think the second is around last mile mobility and looking at last mile mobility and transportation solutions as part of a bigger network.
And what is last mile mobility mean exactly?
So it is, it's the notion that City Bike solves for a certain problem where you might take the train in and have to take a City Bike to kind of get to your office or your house or what have you, but that there are also other mechanisms by which people are looking to solve that. So. We had a company called Samacat in the first cohort that has a city bike-like solution for scooters. And so folks are looking at kind of different permutations of the problem and different hacks for getting from point A to point B.
Very cool. So do you have any closing thoughts about your ambitions, how learning about growing into the role is things you're looking forward to, things that are challenging you, opportunities you're excited about, just in closing?
So we're doing this in New York City for a reason. It's the epitome of a mega city. It is, it has the largest population of any U.S. city. And arguably, it is the most efficient and has taken kind of the most steps to really kind of embrace a smart city and sustainable agenda. I think, though, the important thing to remember about New York is that it's also been built with the skills and creativity of generations of immigrants and immigrant entrepreneurs. And half of our class in cohort 1 was from outside of the U.S. And so I think that it really is important for us to look kind of beyond our borders to attract the best and the brightest from all around the world to kind of come and experience New York and do business in New York and bring their product to life in New York. So that's from an ambition perspective, we really want great talent to come here and build their companies here.
Awesome. Well, Thanks so much to Micah for joining us on this this episode of Megashift today. This is a Megashift exclusive, and we're very grateful for having him, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side.